Live from the Xfinity Studios at WVON. You're listening to Stats and Stilettos.
Those highlights were courtesy of Fox Sports Net. Fox Sports, period. Excuse me. Talking about the Bears disaster today out at Soldier Field against the Seattle Seahawks. What's going on tonight, everybody? Stats and Stilettos. I'm Farouk Basir.
I'm Maya Kai.
And tonight we'll be addressing that game and a whole lot more here on the show. The phone number, if you want to join us, is 773-591-1690. That's 773-591-1690. You can listen online at WVON.com. Go on there, click on the iHeartRadio icon, and get some crystal clear Stats and Stilettos in your ear. That rhymed. I like that, don't you?
Sorry, don't bust out a rap.
All right. You can also follow the show on Twitter at
Stats Stilettos.
And you can like our Facebook page as well. And we're also on Instagram, Instagram.com/Stats Stilettos. Go on there. Once people start going on there, we'll start putting some pictures on there. So that's how that one goes. Coming up at 10:20, we will have AJ Perez from FoxSports.com to come on and talk about the unfortunate incident in Kansas City, Missouri yesterday. And at 9:40, we'll be talking with Robert Little from USA Today Black Sports Online to talk a little bit more about that and some other goings-on in sports.
I'm going to ask him the question that everybody always asks him. Is his name Little or is it Latal? Because in my mind, it's Latal because that's the way it's spelled.
I've never heard anyone called Latal.
I'm going to ask him because, I mean, it's spelled that way. It's not spelled little, but, you know, I'm just curious how he wants it said. He probably at this point just says, as long as you look me up, you can call me what you want.
Well, you know we're always gambling on the show, so you care to put a wager on it, like a penny or something?
Put 10 cents on it.
All right, 10-cent bet, that is little.
10 cents.
Let's roll with that. All right, well, let's start with some of that stuff we heard in the open there. Wow.
Well, let's just say every time there's a loss, the excuse that is given by Lovie Smith is they just weren't prepared. That's consistently the answer to a loss, which I suppose it would be too much to say that for another game where you had the equivalent of a rookie quarterback starting, that you weren't able to contain him, keep him in the pocket, another game where your defense did not look very good. For a team that is known to be a good third down defense, they were atrocious once again. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, is having a quarterback that can be mobile, is it that unpredictable of how to make proper adjustments? This gets back to knowing when to go man-to-man and knowing when to be in a zone. Mm-hmm. This is a simple equation. Now, I guess it's easier for me to be the person in the backseat saying this by watching the game, but to me, it was just poor choices of when they were going to be zone and when they were going to be man-to-man. It just was a really ugly game. And now here's another game where there's, the injuries are compounding, but this is happening around the league. It isn't unique to the Bears. Right, exactly. But at least he didn't use that as an excuse, having injuries and players. And the O-line, for what it's worth, weren't too shabby.
They weren't bad. They were good. They didn't give up a sack.
They weren't too shabby. Good. I mean, Jay Cutler got hurt a couple times, got knocked down, but overall, I think the Karimi is doing great on the outside for this being his third start there. Mm-hmm. I think the one area you thought that you'd have tons of complaints would be the O-line, and they actually had a decent game this week. We'll see what happens next week.
But I think it was good. You can't really put an asterisk on it because Seattle has a top 5 defense. They're known for rushing the passer, so they played great. The offensive line today's game came down to 2 plays. Really, when you think about it, they both happened in the first half. The boneheaded call on 4th and 1
mm-hmm.
by your head coach, who I'll get to him in a second, and the drop by Bennett. They should have been up 17-0.
When you said your head coach, I mean, you must mean the listeners because
Well, yeah.
that he is not my guy.
Yeah.
You know that Lovie Smith is not my guy.
I have officially came to your camp because I've always been
hello.
I've always been kind of indifferent to Lovie. I felt like Lovie neither won or lost the Bears games until these last few weeks. I kind of felt like he was just there, which is fine. I don't want anybody yelling and screaming. I don't want Mike Ditka part 2. That type of stuff doesn't win football games. So I wasn't one of those people that, he didn't show enough emotion, but then I wasn't one of those people that said, I like his cool, calm demeanor. He's kind of just there.
It's not even the demeanor to me at this point. It's the overall. At the end of the day, so people will say, well, you don't give him credit when they win. I'm like, I don't give him credit, period. I feel they win in spite of him and they lose in spite of him to a certain degree because he's not. It doesn't seem that he's making the adjustments. Like, for instance, if he is a defensive guru, that's what he's known to be, then why is the defense slumping every single year?
They always wear down late in the year.
But I will say this, though. This is late. Injuries are happening. People are tired. That's fair to say. And even Urlacher had a good play where he ran and he prevented a touchdown. But at the end of the day, it's just this is not playoff caliber football. I would like to say these remaining 4 games are not that big of a deal. They should be able to win them because of the opponents. But I can't even say that now because they've had some losses in games that they should have won at this point. Because Minnesota might bust out because did you see AP today? Oh, my God. Oh, love it. Anyways, Minnesota might act out. We don't know what they're going to do. Green Bay is going to be just as hungry as we are now because now they're back in first place because this all comes down to divisional games as much as it does conference games. This is why all this stuff becomes so relevant. So they may end up staying in the wild card hunt if Green Bay stays on top of their toes because they may not win the division because of some of these losses like against Seattle.
I think Lovey has to go. I know they're not going to do it now, and I hate listening to radio and hearing
you can
people
stop shaking your head,
after
Malcolm,
the wins and losses.
He needs to be axed.
After the losses and stuff, they say, fire the coach. No, but
here's the thing.
Lovey has to go.
Like someone, I can't remember, once I was listening to Precious's show, The P. Wither Experience, and she had this guy on there. That's right. Yep. Good show. She had this guy named Lionel somebody. I can't remember. I think I'll remember Lionel because I always think of the Thundercats Lion-O. So for some reason, I remember his first name.
Okay.
And he made this comment. I always say this, too, that mediocrity is dangerous. People who are consistently in love with Lovie Smith, to me, are people who are in love with mediocrity. At some point, you have to expect more from your head coach than, okay, he's got a decent winning record. I have the same beef with Iowa. Mm-hmm. You get dangerous, you get comfortable with mediocrity, and all of a sudden you can fall out of contention very easily. They need to get somebody into that position that's competent. Here's what's good to know that. When they brought Emory aboard, initially the conversation was that Lovie's job was secure. That conversation kind of changed up a bit once they brought Emory in and got him established because they know he's competent. They know he can draft. He's done it here. He's done it with Kansas City. He did it with Atlanta. So they know they've got a GM that will make every draft pick count, and he knows how to go into free agency and build a team. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you, if I could have a conversation with Phil Emory, I know Lovie Smith is not his guy. I feel that in my gut. Yeah. Not because he didn't pick him. Because remember, they've worked together. He's worked under Lovie before. When he was more on the draft side with the Bears early in his career. So he's worked with him before. I guarantee you he's not very impressed and probably feels that he can do better at that head coaching position. And I'm glad the Bears, I'm hoping that by the end of this season, that the Chicago version of Driving Miss Daisy, that would be Virginia McCaskey and Lovie Smith, is going to end because it's had a long enough run here. I'm tired of seeing it at this point.
Stats and Stilettos, WVON 1690.
Joining us live on the line from blacksportsonline.com is, all right, Robert, we got 25 cents on the line on this one, man. You got to give me the right answer to this. We've been talking about this Maya and I for a while. Is it Little or Little?
It's Little.
Oh, get out of here.
See, Robert, here's the deal. My mother is a speech pathologist. So if I know anything, I know how to pronounce people's names. And I was like, everyone says his name wrong. And they're like, no, we don't. I'm like, that's not Little. Told you.
But that's what I mean. We've had you on a few times, Robert, and you never say anything.
Because you just go with it, don't you, Robert?
Don't go with it. Correct us.
Knew it. Okay. So, Robert, we were talking about, obviously, the whole Javon Belcher, unfortunate murder-suicide that happened in Kansas City. And we had a guest on who kind of gave us some information. A couple questions for you. What's the backdrop to this relationship that he had with his fiancée, mother of his child? Thank you for my 25 cents. Do you know much about her, their relationship, how they met?
Yeah, they actually met through, to my understanding, is that she was friends with some other players, wives, girlfriends. She was she's Jamal Charles's either wife or girlfriend's cousin. And she also was friends with another player that's not with the Chiefs, I guess, girlfriend. So she, for lack of a better term, she was in that, circle.
In that circle.
Right, and that's for what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of times, the type of relationships that come about, you ever wonder how, these girls meet, certain athletes and everything. It's kind of like that. They know someone, they introduce them to someone, and they feel comfortable because, they already kind of know the lifestyle and know the circle. So, to my understanding, they just kind of met like you would any type of social. If you worked in a certain environment and you ran into certain people, all the time. So it was, wasn't anything, extraordinary or strange about it. It was just, through mutual friends.
So it's like dating that comes with a recommendation. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this person seems cool. We got, the backdrop's already been done. We know what kind of person she is. Okay, so referred from somebody else, they start dating. All you're really hearing about this story currently is that there was an argument that stemmed from her going out to a concert and coming home late. And then you hear several hours later in the morning that he shoots her and then leaves and goes to the chief's facility. Everything from, I read your story on the website, and the pictures of the two of them, they look like the perfect couple, like they were so in love. In fact, in all those pictures, he looks like the kind of guy that would fall head over heels in love with a girl. He looked like that with her, at least. Anything coming out, anybody speaking out about the nature of their relationship?
Well, at the beginning, everyone, did think that, because all, we had to go on was, those photos, as we were trying to gather, information about, exactly, how this could happen, because this is not, a normal, type of thing. But come to find out that there were, problems, and they weren't unusual problems, not just for athlete relationships, just for, relationships, in general, the stress of, having a newborn, disagreements on child care. When you throw in the athlete part, there's the money, situation. If, I'm going to, sue you for child support, which, when you hear a lot with young couples, you're going out too much, you're staying out too late, you're not being at home enough. Just general type of disagreements that a lot of young couples have, especially young couples that, just, had, children. So it wasn't, all good as it at first appeared to be. It seemed like they were having some serious issues, within the relationship.
Did you find it kind of strange that Kansas City left his jersey hanging in the locker room? I mean, why do you think they're not distancing themselves from this guy?
Well, I thought it was awful. I mean, I try to see things from all perspectives, and I understand his teammates have probably only seen him in one light. And when we all, maybe know people and the way they deal with us is all positive. But, the fact that, the facts are pretty clear, about what happened. You shoot someone in your home, 9 times with your mother present. You're
9
not
times?
9 times. Yeah, this is for the police. This is not speculation. This is not someone, a lot of times when these stories happen, people have all type of conspiracy theories of why it happened. This is from the actual, police and their report, that he shot her 9 times with his mother present and his daughter, in the home. I mean, there's no good guy aspect. There's no explanation. There's no rationalization, for that. There's no way to defend that, no matter what, she was doing or how upset, he was. You don't shoot people unless you fear for your own life, and that wasn't, simply the case here. So I do think, I don't want to just go out and say, the Chiefs are just to blame, for that, because obviously they're going through a lot of, different emotions right now, but that's something that you really have to think about. Do you want to associate yourself with someone who, in essence, no matter how you try to talk it or rationalize it, is a cold-blooded, murderer, and instead of, taking responsibilities for his actions, then in turn killed himself in a cowardly fashion, in front of, other people, So this guy—
Hey, Robert, you want to take a caller? They're not seeing eye to eye with us. This is John. What's going on, John? How you doing tonight?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Pretty
good,
good.
John. How are you?
Look, I find this quite disturbing. The host of the show speak at the way that they do. Mental illness is just like any other illness anyone could have. And sure, to us, hearing about this tragic incident, it's really sad, more so than how, let's say, selfish or ignorant or malice or mean you want to paint this guy. The young lady has been boasting about her credentials, and I'm sure if she has all these credentials, then she should understand something about mental illness. People do things.
Well, first of all, John, John, you're being preemptive because you're assuming that Javon Belcher had a mental illness. It has not been reported in any way, shape, or form that he has actually suffered from any form of mental illness. So you're being preemptive in saying that. Now, if that would have come out that he was being treated for depression, bipolar disorder, then obviously that would be addressed. You're being presumptive by saying that. Based on what we know, there was no mental illness tied to this.
John, you there? John?
Robert?
John, you there?
All kind of people in our families, and, that man has a family. that lady has a family, and evidently they felt they loved one another, and it's something tragic. But to hear the venom that you guys are spewing, is really disrespectful and very petty. I'm really upset to hear that you guys have went to that level.
Petty.
No.
What about the girl, John?
No, it's
How's
not
that petty?
And it's not disrespectful. Because of his actions, there is now a 2-month-old girl who will never know her mother and will never know her father.
What's petty about that?
That's selfish. We don't know why he did it. Like, you were being preemptive in saying about my credentials. Like I said, I deal with this a lot, and there was nothing reported that Javon Belcher suffered from any form of mental illness. Because trust me, if he was being treated, it would have been the first thing that would have come out in the press, that he had a psychiatrist, a therapist, he was on medication. None of those things have come out. So all we can base this on is they had a relationship that was very tumultuous, and somehow now it's ended in him shooting his girlfriend 9 times and then killing himself in front of his coach and his general manager. How can you say that we should paint this picture of it's tragic? This is beyond tragic. It's unacceptable.
You don't care to respond to that, Robert?
Well, and I hear this a lot, unfortunately. And it's not just with athletes. I think it's our society in general, is that we want to make excuses and we want to pass the blame.
Exactly.
Exactly. Cassandra Perkins can't defend herself right now. She can't explain what was happening beforehand. Javon can't say, what was happening, what he was thinking, because of his actions. So what we have to do is we just have to, I try to look at things in a very common sense type of way, because when you don't know all the answers, you have to, make it as simple as possible. And I just think to myself, what would be justifiable for anybody to walk into a home and shoot somebody 9 times with a smaller child and their parent in the room? And the only justification that I have for that is if their own life, was in danger, because there's nothing, that she could have been doing that he couldn't just walk away from.
But
Robert, that bothers me when people, are saying that we're being petty,
right?
Toward him when
he's not the victim.
You're making, he doesn't deserve
any
type of sympathy.
And you know what this is like? And you know what this is like? This is like the Ray Caruth situation, which, by the way, there was never any noted mental illness about Ray Caruth. First of all, I just got really angry when John played that card, because so many times when people do wrong things, they want to attribute it to mental illness. This just might be a case of a person who did something for all the wrong reasons. With Ray Caruth, he plotted to have his baby mama killed because he didn't want to pay her child support, and actually plotted a murder plan. I mean, to me, it's the same kind of situation where, Robert, you're right. People rarely ever want to be held accountable for their actions of others. We should buy him. It's tragic. It's more than tragic. It's ridiculous to a degree. Because I'm like you. What could have been so profound that he had to shoot her 9 times? What was so important?
Shoot her 1 time.
Not even, period. What punch her? I don't know. But I'm just saying. I can't even wrap my mind around the fact that John wants to defend someone who the act is so egregious. It's so egregious. He did it in front of his mother, who will have PTSD until the day she's dead. His child. There's so many people that now have to deal with this act, and he could only think that we were being unfair to the person who is the perpetrator. I don't understand that.
All right, Robert, we appreciate it as always, man. Thanks a lot.
No problem, you guys. Have a wonderful night.
All right, you too. All right, that's Robert Littal. I sit corrected because I'm sitting.
You can always find him at Black Sports Online. Good website, lots of good information, as well as you can follow him on Twitter at BLK Sports Online. So in the back of my mind, was this premeditated? And I only say that because usually in a lot of murder-suicide connections, they kill the person and then they kill themselves, usually right there. Things are premeditated when I kill you and I go do something else. Let me give you an example of this. When I was at the University of Iowa, there was the school shooting. I'm not sure if you remember this, like in 1992. The shooter went into a school building, shot the receptionist only because she happened to be there, shot 3 people, walked several blocks to another building, shot a couple more people, and then he shot himself. So she shot all the people he was intending to shoot, which means it was a premeditated act. Right. So I sit here and wonder, he gets in his car, he drives like 5 minutes to the practice facility. He knew that they would be there, only to shoot himself in front of, at that time, the GM, as well as Romeo Cornell. Say, thank you, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Scott Paoli is the GM.
Yeah, and then shot himself. You could have wrote a note that said that. Not to be funny, because that's post-traumatic stress for a lot of people, having to witness something of that magnitude. I honestly believe that he had given this thought for whatever reason. I'm not sure what could have been so drastic to him that he would have felt that he had to kill her, but obviously he knew he had to kill himself too, because he had no life after this. This was it.
Because he's a coward. All of that stuff you just illustrates my point, and the point that a lot of people are making, and the point that a lot of people are criticizing the teammates for. They're focusing on, he was great in the locker room, all this and all that. Brady Quinn, I heard him on
his written speech.
Well, yeah, kind of. It might have been, but I mean, it was right after he said it was written.
A lot of people said it was written because it was so eloquent.
Yeah,
but it seemed true. They said.
He was on it, but it was right after the game, so I don't know. But he put it very well. We might grab that sound later in the show, hopefully, Malcolm, if you can. But he was very eloquent in the way he described how people are saying. He wasn't too quick to say this guy was that great. I think at one point he said he was good in the locker room, which feels funny saying after something like this. You know what I mean?
And that's a truthful thing to say then, because, Farouk, I do agree with you. It's hard to – this is kind of like the paternal thing. It's hard to say something positive about somebody when such an egregious act has happened, even though a part of you only knows them. I only know you in the locker room, and everything I've seen about you is positive. But now you've done something that's such an atrocity, a side of you that I didn't know. Or is that true? I don't know. I still say this was premeditated. I don't think it was an impulsive crime of passion. I don't. I think he planned to do it.
I beef for my kid's mom all the time. All the time.
All the time?
All of the time.
That's what I'm saying.
And I've never, ever, ever once. They need their mom. That little girl that he killed, this person that I was calling some other names before the show went on the air, killed.
You're right.
She needed her mom.
She needed her dad, too.
Welcome back to Stats and Stilettos. Got a comment? Call the show 773-591-1690 or leave a comment on our Twitter page @StatsStilettos.
This week on the Perry Small Show, that's my homegirl, a recap of this week's hottest news, getting ready for the holiday season and New Year, and much more. You can hit Perry up on Facebook, that's Perry with an I, and on Twitter @PerrySmall, and tell her your comments and how you feel. She might even read some of them on her show. That's weekdays from 9 to noon here on WVON. Stats and Stilettos, Farouk, Maya, and now this.
And you know what that sound means. It's time for Around the League. I am Damon Spruiel, your moderator here on Stats and Stilettos. You can follow me on Twitter @DEMONZE. Great topic so far, man. It's been a great show. So let's go ahead and hop into some football. Let's go into these scores right here. First start off with the NFC North. The matchup up there, Green Bay 23, Minnesota 14. Aaron Rodgers, 286 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. You got James Starks with 66 yards and 1 touchdown. Christian Ponder, 119 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. And Adrian Peterson, 210 yards, 1 touchdown. Maya, all for naught, though. Big loss for Minnesota. They're trying to stay in their bubble, but big win for Green Bay.
A very big win for Green Bay. Once again, obviously, with that win and the Bears' loss, that now puts them leading within the division because they have more division wins than the Bears do. So now, right now, they're poised. If they have an even kill schedule, the Bears may be looking at a wild card just because of these games. I mean, they do play Minnesota next week. Let's hope that Minnesota has a bad game. Let's hope that. But Minnesota can be a team that can be a spoiler. It's not like they're a god-awful team. I mean, Adrian Peterson is going to get off one way or the other, and he got off today. But Green Bay, for what it's worth, they have their fair share of injuries. I mean, they're not exactly, a team that I would say is as dangerous as they were last year just because of missing key players. But either way, this is going to come down to a race between the Bears and Green Bay.
Yeah.
So it's division win, but I'm not shocked by it. I'm not. Christian Ponder made some mistakes. He had a few checkdowns that weren't good. interception-wise. But, it's unfortunately for him, it's growing pains in that position. I mean, I'm sure they wish that he was very Andrew Luck-like and play style.
I'm sure a lot of people wish they was
Andrew Luck is almost like, Luck, horseshoe. I don't know. There might be a correlation there. I don't know. But I'm just saying. He's amazing. Him and RG3 are amazing as rookies. They really,
definitely.
They are. So, obviously, Ponder is not that same type of player. He's not a rookie, but he kind of has this full year of playing, which makes him like a rookie. So, he made mistakes, honestly, that cost Minnesota the game.
Adrian Peterson with the best touchdown run of the year today.
Isn't that a franchise record, too, for them?
Yeah, it was that.
That knee is getting better.
Yeah.
Which I have to say, you look at how he's bounced back from that, and you think about Derrick Rose and say, okay, this is possible because of especially the kind of movement that you, as a running back, have to have. So,
in a much more physical sport.
Yes.
And Jordy Nelson left this game with an injury for the Packers, so yet another Packer injury. So
they're piling up the injuries just as much as the Bears are. So, like I said, this is the game I wouldn't say that's hype, but it's a win that's a necessity. That's what it comes down to. It's a necessity. That
makes that game next week up in Minnesota huge for not only the Bears, but the Vikings as well. The Vikings will be fighting for their lives.
Right now.
So that's not going to be an easy game for the Bears.
In the playoff hunt, right now they are 6-6. They are the 8th seed in the playoff hunt behind Dallas. Dallas won. Right. So Minnesota does still have some playoff life in there. So they're going to be wanting that win next week just as much as the Bears are.
And they hold their own destiny. That's a big game.
So that's going to be a hunger game. No,
they going to fight like it is.
It is. It'll be interesting.
All right. Second game is going to Indianapolis, 35, Detroit 33. Andrew Luck, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 391 yards. You got Donnie Avery, 91 yards with 2 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception for 313 yards. And Calvin Johnson, 177 yards with 1 touchdown.
Man, my mistress went off. Because, Payne's my husband.
Yeah. Farouk, what you think?
Robert touched on it when we were talking to him earlier about the Lions. They play like their coach allows them to play. They're very dysfunctional. They make a lot of mistakes. The Lions we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're right.
They allowed Indianapolis to hang around. Luck was having a very bad game. He had 3 interceptions and was making some bad passes. And as a 24 for 54 completion percentage shows right there. He didn't have a high completion percentage right there, under 50%. So, but he bounced back. I mean, he's the number 1 pick, and he kind of showed it at the end of this game with that touchdown, literally as the clock ran out.
As the clock ran out.
That was pretty good.
That was crazy.
Well, and Detroit lost this game for themselves. Indianapolis was down like 12 points, and there was like 3 minutes left in the game or something crazy. So Detroit gave Indianapolis the game, which unfortunately, this is kind of like it's their character. Mm-hmm. They play inconsistent football for 4 quarters, and that has not changed at all since last year. Last year, I think they just surprised people. But this year, they're just not. You're right, Farouk. You got to give Schwartz, obviously, more time because of what he's managed to do with this team. So you can't write him off because he did technically resurrect them.
Oh, no, yeah, he did. But I'll be curious to hear what's going on in Detroit radio right now.
Right. Matter of fact, if we could tap into that, that'll be interesting because I think you're right. They lack discipline. Yeah. They're going to have to address what they're going to do with Sue. They had a lot of offseason issues like with Fairley, just a lot of different stuff. This team has no discipline.
It's one thing to harp on Lovey because they're not winning and they're not getting over that hump. This seems to be a behavioral issue. I mean,
right.
It's
a lack of institutional control.
Yeah, something's going on up there.
Right, they're not a disciplined team, and you see that in the penalties that they get. Mm-hmm. They just lack discipline, and in many games, that has cost them the game. And then you saw that today.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. All right, next game. St. Louis 16, San Francisco 13. I don't know what's going on with the Rams, but they got the San Fran's numbers. Sam Bradford, 26 for 39, 221 yards. You got Chris Givens, 92 yards. Colin Kaepernick, 208 yards, 21 for 32, and Frank Gore, 58 yards for 1 touchdown. As I said before, it just seems as if the Rams have their number, and that happens within a lot of sports, basketball, baseball. You match up with a team, and you can just play with them. And this is 2 times they played with them, going into overtime too. This is another overtime win for Farouk, and San Francisco was able to pull it out. St. Louis.
Alex Smith didn't play right because he's the reason why they can't score, why they can't get big plays. This was Colin Kaepernick, and they scored a grand total of 13 points in 5 quarters. I mean, but he's supposed to be out there to make the offense more explosive. This is what his boneheaded coach, Jim Harbaugh, is saying.
Right. Remember, the argument last week was he allows them to open the
Open it
playbook.
up a little bit.
And our argument was, well, what plays are not being played? Because we don't know what the playbook is.
Yeah.
This also was not necessarily, I mean, granted, Frank Gore had a touchdown, but he only had 23 rushes for 58 yards.
Right.
So that means for Frank Gore, this wasn't a very productive game. And then you can see in the games where they've had success, he's got way more yardage. Clearly, he got the touches, just didn't get the yardage. So that I'd stand the reason that Frank Gore not having a big game is part of why they didn't win.
And also, too, the Rams don't suck anymore. They're just average now. They've went from bad to average. So they're better than most people give them credit for.
Jeff Fisher came in and kind of righted the ship. Sam Bradford seems to be the quarterback.
Healthy, and he's healthy.
And he's healthy. So the Rams put up a good fight, and it's, like I said, some way, somehow, they always beat the San Francisco 49ers. Next game, Atlanta 23, New Orleans 13. Matt Ryan, 18 for 33, 165 yards, 1 touchdown. Michael Turner, that's right, NIU in the building. 83 yards, 1 touchdown, going to get some oranges. That's right. Drew Brees, 28 for 55 interceptions, killed my fantasy week. And Mark Ingram, he had 13 yards, but he had 1 touchdown. So, Farouk, you had the Saints marching in, and somebody shut that door real fast because they are not doing what they're supposed to do.
You got to accept. The Saints go as Drew Brees goes.
True.
So when Drew Brees has a bad game,
Yeah.
because offense is what keeps him in the game, we know their defense is not where it needs to be. So if Drew Brees has a bad game, the chances of them bouncing back from that, and you could tell from the very start of that game, it just wasn't going.
Right.
It wasn't going to be a good game. So I didn't expect for them to win because he was having such a terrible game.
Well, he's lost the last 2 games for him. The game against the 49ers last week, and then this game this past Thursday. It's been all Drew Brees, and he's in a slump, I guess. I don't know what's been the cause of this bad play, but yeah, they're going to be 8-8. I think all of us, except for Ty, kind of called that at the start of the year.
Yeah, she did say it was going to be 8-8.
I didn't. I
thought it was going to be worse than that.
Right. I didn't know if they'd even go 8-8. So
Right.
I mean, that seems like what they're marching to. And obviously they're out of the playoff picture. That game was the elimination point for them.
Yeah.
So.
And do it in the playoffs, Atlanta.
Doing the playoffs, as Farouk always is. And a little side note too, I believe Sean Payton's in renegotiation with the organization, so look like he is going to come back.
Good for him.
All right.
So,
last game, going to break down. Pittsburgh 23, Baltimore 20. Very surprising game, this right here. Charlie Batch, 25 for 36, 276 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Got Heath Miller go for 97 yards with 1 touchdown. Joe Flacco, 16 for 34, 188 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And you had Ray Rice run for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, I was under the impression that Pittsburgh was done. No Ben Roethlisberger. Then you go to Leftwich, and he isn't anything. But they was able to pull out a really good win, Maya, against the Ravens. Not, a playoff team.
And considering how bad Charlie Batch looks.
Yes.
Like, he looked rusty and like, wow, you should not be on anybody's roster.
Yeah, why are you in
He
the
looked a lot more efficient. He was hitting passes today. Like, that's the Charlie Batch. Not that he was ever a phenomenal NFL quarterback.
He was
but
serviceable.
But he was, he was competent. And today you saw, even him, he was crying because he felt like, oh my God, I don't look so ridiculous this week. Because he did. Last week I was like, oh, wow. But, he got where he needed to be, was in a position to get the field goal to win the game. Bottom line. Now this all gets, the yoke gets shouldered on, on Roethlisberger when he comes back next week. Assuming he does come back next week.
Assuming he does come back.
That they're saying, but that's assuming he does.
Well, they proved that they could win a game without him, which had been hard for the Steelers. Batch was very efficient. And what about Flacco? I mean, I've been on this forever. He's not good. He's just not good.
To me, he's like Phillip Rivers.
Well, yeah.
You want to say that they're
but they're going to be the second seed in the AFC.
Right. Well, okay, right. So you can't bash him.
You can't bash him that
much.
He isn't terrible.
He's not going to win the big game for them. As he proved last year.
A game manager. Like,
yes,
everyone wants Alex Smith to be a game
That.
manager. So is he just pretty much not an elite quarterback? He's a game manager.
He's middle of the pack.
I'll take Alex Smith over Joe Flacco.
Actually, I would too.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
I know people.
I'm not a fan of Alex Smith.
I'm not a huge fan of him. I know he gets a lot of flack because
Oh.
of his of his development. But fairness to Alex Smith, the 49ers system was so atrocious prior to Harbaugh getting there. He finally gets some consistency for 2 years in a row. We all know consistency in a system is a big deal.
Oh, it's
and
huge.
he has thrived in having consistency.
I.e. Jay Cutler.
Right. So I just, I think out of fairness to him, that he does have skill sets that I don't know, and I like Harbaugh. I would really like to sit down and have a conversation with him about what he's thinking. But we talked about this last week, that Alex Smith wasn't his guy to begin with. He was
He
being
was
shopped
not.
in January.
Yep.
And the only reason he's still there is because they didn't win in the Peyton Manning sweepstakes.
Exactly.
So they gave him a 3-year contract. He gets like $8.5 million, 16.5 guaranteed. But what's interesting is if they decide to like part company, they like to pay him like $1 million next year to let him go.
He's not his
So
guy.
this isn't a contract that says we want to keep you long term.
Right.
And he saw the writing on the wall. He knew it. He knew it.
But to be so disrespected like this, and he's a nice fella.
Hey, it's business. Football,
But
it's business.
But he has not said a peep. Like when I say he has kept his chin up and just, because trust me, back in Harbaugh's day, he never was quiet about if he felt that he was being disrespected. So to have this type of, who knows? But we don't know what they've said behind closed doors. True. I don't know. But Alex Smith, I have to say, is a very respectable athlete.
Very true. Very true. And to run down the rest of the
Wait,
rest of the
I
games.
know you're gonna talk about Denver, don't you?
Oh, we can go ahead and throw it in. Denver 31, Tampa Bay 23. Go, Maya.
I just need you to say it because
Hey,
why
I am a Peyton Manning fan.
For all you people out there who was like, oh, his neck's not going to last 2 games. Here it is that not only has he had a phenomenal season at 9-3, they have clinched the AFC West.
AFC worst.
What you can say what you want.
It's not that hard to do.
But here's the bottom line. But he got the job done.
He did.
He got it for someone who was out an entire season. Look how he bounced back. And that's what you talk about, talent. Being out that long, that kind of surgery. He got Denver. Denver took a gamble, and it's worked to their advantage.
Wait a minute, let me ask you this thing. Can they beat the Patriots?
Yep.
Can they beat the Texans? They proved that they couldn't earlier this year.
But you know what? But now they've got some traction. They've got some rhythm. I mean, okay, did you see some of the highlights from the game? Did you see some of the throws I was like, oh my God, that's like Peyton Manning of old. He was dropping bombs like in places that only his receiver could get it. So I'm saying, you look at the beginning of the season, you knew he was rusty, but you're starting to see him. He's hitting on all cylinders. He has made every receiver on that team so much better. So you know me, I'll put money on Peyton Manning.
He's going to have to go to Houston to do it, though.
But you know what? Here's the thing. He ain't scared. Because Peyton Manning has a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
He has something he wants to prove. That, granted, it's crazy that the Colts, by the way, are 8-4. Ooh, whose record is 8-4 too?
The Bears?
The Bears.
And in Green Bay? Wow. That's kind of weird. 8-4, rookie quarterback, 8-4, veteran team. Something about that.
You know we're headed towards, right? I already see it. I see it coming. I see the light. We're going to get a Denver versus Indianapolis playoff.
Well, I want to talk about the playoff picture at some point before we, because I'm a really big fan of going to NFL.com and you go to their playoff picture because when I say it's fleshed out really nicely, what's interesting is that, Damons, finish your part and then we'll talk about the playoffs.
Okay. Buffalo 34, Jacksonville 18, Houston 24, Tennessee 10, KC 27, Carolina 21, New England 23, Miami 16, New York Jets 7, Arizona 6.
In the game of the day.
Cleveland 20, Oakland 17. My Raiders, my God. Cincinnati 20, San Diego 13. And last Monday night we had Carolina over Philadelphia 30-22. Now, what's going on with the playoffs?
And tonight we had.
Tonight we had
Dallas.
They upset. Upset.
Was it really?
Philadelphia.
We had 2 teams that are like just totally like teetering on. Hey, but this was maybe Andy Reid's maybe an audition kind of his interview. Maybe.
I told you I called that a couple of weeks ago. He going down there.
So when you look at the playoff picture, what's interesting is as it stands right now, if the season ended today, obviously the Falcons and the NFC they're 11-1. They're the number 1 seed. The 49ers for now at 8-3-1 are the projected 2nd seed. That's right now, which means they're the divisional round. They don't have to play anybody in that first round of the playoffs. You jump down into the wild card round, and you'd have matchups potentially like the Seahawks and Green Bay because you take the winner of each of those divisions to match up, and the top 2 that are in the wild card round. So right now the Bears are sitting in a wild card round. They're a projected 5th seed, which means they'd have to play the Giants. That's an interesting matchup. That might be a dangerous matchup for them.
The Bears get slaughtered.
I'm just saying, that's today. That's right now. It doesn't mean this would stick.
I don't think they get slaughtered.
I'm saying because the season has not totally unfolded. It's not done yet. The Seahawks would potentially match up with the Packers. The reason that the Bears would have to face the Giants is because you can't have that Bears-Packers matchup right there. So if the Bears have to match up against the Giants, not a good look for them right now.
Not at all. Considering that Giants' defensive line against the Bears' offensive line. And even though as good as they played today, but the Giants probably have the best defensive line in it. That's a slaughter.
Yeah, but they always that herky-jerky team. You never they up and down, and I think this will be the season where they're down.
Now, when you look at the rest of the NFC and the wild card round, you've got the Cowboys and the Vikings are both at 6-6. So right now, based on wins, division wins, conference wins rather, The Cowboys they're over the Vikings and being the 7th and 8th seed. Buccaneers are still holding on at 6-6 as well as the 9th seed, and the Rams at 5-6-1 are 10th seed, and that's the AFC. Now, when you flip over to the other side, Farouk, we talked about this. Obviously, the Texans at 11-1, they're the number 1 seed. The Patriots at 9-3, they're 2 seeds, so they're divisional sitting, waiting for their opponents. The Texans would play the lowest. Now, when you're the number 1 seed, you play the lowest winning team from the wild card round.
Right.
So you get all, you kind of get
You get the 5 or the 6.
Advantage. Right, you get the lower round. So when you talk about other matchups, interesting enough, you could see the Steelers and the Ravens again, just because they're the 6th and the 3rd seed, with the Steelers being the 6th seed.
Right.
But the Colts and the Broncos, that is a matchup that everybody will die to see. It's almost it's too unreal, because who would have thought?
It happens all the time in sports.
But I'm just saying, but nobody would have thought that the Colts would be sitting at 8-4 and the Broncos would be at 9-3. And they would be playing off in a wild card round. Yeah. That might be one of the biggest games in the playoffs.
The only thing that would make it better, which it won't happen that way, is if it was in Indianapolis, because the Colts aren't going to win their division. But
and not just that, but how would the Indy fans, how would they deal with that? Their beloved Peyton Manning comes back home, but their new quarterback, who has done so well.
I can tell you how to deal with it. I want to win.
Right.
Beat him.
I'm sure he would get a warm welcome.
Beat him. Oh, yeah, definitely.
But, it's an odd and and for Peyton, actually, that would not be a good matchup, because that's an emotional moment. So it'd be better for him to play in Denver than to have to play in Indianapolis. And then you look at the rest of the AFC, the wild card. You've got the Bengals, who kept themselves alive today with that win at 7-5. They're the 7th seed. The Jets.
That's it, though, after the Bengals. None of those other
But no,
teams
so you're right, because the Jets are 5-7, 8th seed. The Bills are 5-7. The Bills, talk about a season that I thought was not going to be the way it was.
Yeah,
they just are a team that has not, they've underperformed me all season.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And the Dolphins.
Past couple of seasons.
Actually, the last 3 teams in wild card hunt are 5-7. Which is crazy. And what do you think about Sanchez being benched after 3 interceptions? Just curious.
I'm surprised he didn't go with Tebow.
He's hurt.
He's hurt.
Oh, he's hurt? Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, because y'all going to be gone anyway.
Yeah. All of them.
All of them. And just to give you that last score, that was Dallas 38, Philadelphia 33. And that's around the league.
All right, well, we're up against the clock, people.
Let's do our thank yous.
All right, thank you to AJ Perez from FoxSports.com for joining us, giving us some background on the whole Kansas City thing that went on yesterday. Thank you to Robert Little for joining us. Let's Hall.
Thank you.
For giving us even more background on that, plus a variety of other sports topics as well. Thank you to Alexis Wolford, our producer, Tamia Baker, our associate producer, Damon Spruiel on the cameras and also on the Around the League. Thank you to Malcolm Rockhold and Greg Baker on the boards. Thank you to Naima Mitchell on the social media and on the phones holding it down in there.
Hold it down.
Yeah, we will check you guys out next week. Peace.
Later.